Yo, yo, yo. So I'm recording this intro right now and I sound like absolute fucking shit. My voice is just kind of gone. Like I have a sore throat. I've been sick this entire day. Um, and I honestly debated on just like not even releasing an episode this week because one, I was lazy about just not doing this earlier in the week to get this episode ready in order to release on Thursdays, which is for whatever arbitrary reason the day that I've decided to release episodes. Um, and it's funny, typically, like I do actually record the intros and the outros and like make all the clips. Like I'll try to do it on like Monday or Tuesday, so I have time. But today is Wednesday. So this is like the day before that I'm releasing this. And then also, I guess, to give you guys some insight into like how I do this, like a lot of these episodes that I record, like they're already recorded. Like I think I recorded this episode maybe like 2 months ago or something like that. So it's been a minute, and obviously I've had all the time in the world to do this, but this is just my process. And I guess now it's kind of making me question, like maybe I can do it differently. Cause again, I woke up this morning feeling terrible. I didn't do a single thing all day. I was like, I'm just going to give myself a day of rest, which is completely fine. But I was kind of just sitting here like tonight, it's like 8 p.m. now. I was like, fuck, like I do want to release an episode. And that's the thing. Like, even though I'm sick and feeling like shit and didn't want to do anything, part of me still like wanted to do this. And I don't know if like I'd make myself feel bad and get into like this whole like shame and guilt cycle if I didn't release it. But either way, part of me like wanted to take some action here and just release it anyway. So I promise I don't sound like this during this episode. But I had so much fun. I remember recording this with Susan. Susan is awesome. She's got some dope stories and we just had a really good conversation. I feel like I say that pretty much every single fucking time. But she's got a lot of wisdom. And she's like living her best life right now. And like, I respect the absolute fuck out of it. And I'm so glad that we connected. So thank you again for indulging me and listening to me ramble this far. If you made it this far, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I think now that I've kind of just gone down this path and like gone through this journey, I realized nobody in life is ever actually truly put together. And anybody that is, that like gives off that appearance, like they're just holding it all in. Like there's something that's kind of off, at least in my opinion, from now what I notice. I'm curious if you would think the same.
So that one of the most incredible lines of wisdom I ever got was through a friend and a mentor. She's really big in TV, like super high exec, gave me like a bunch of jobs during my career. And she said, nobody knows anything. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Totally turned everything on its head.
Yeah. Once I started to realize that I didn't have to know everything and like I didn't have to be put together, that allowed me to just live so much more freely without having to like give off these appearances. Cause I think definitely for the earlier part of my life, it was me, doing the whole like fake it till you make it thing, like trying to appear like I know what I'm talking about. Like I was, I worked in sales before. Sales, at least tech sales, that's a huge fucking fake it till you make it business. And like it just brought me so much like internal suffering. Like I never felt good about it just because like it being fake, man. Like your body feels it. Your body doesn't like not being able to be you. And so once you kind of build up these personas, and if they're built on false narratives, like eventually, like that shit just caught up to me. Like I had no other choice. And so that's why now I want to have these conversations as much as possible. And I want to make sure that I'm not falling back into my old habits of trying to appear like I am always put together and like I know what I'm doing, because even though I'm still doing this shit, there's still just so much out there that's just unknown, and it's always going to be that way. And it's just being comfortable with that.
Which is true wisdom very early on.
So something about your story is, I guess that kind of just caught me, was the amount of transformation that you've gone through. Just, I mean, your whole story from living in Pennsylvania, correct? That was where you grew up? Okay,
Yeah, little tiny
Pennsylvania,
town.
and then you just immediately just up and moved to New York City without a plan, and then moved to Los Angeles, and now you're in rural Montana. And that's quite a journey. So I want to start from the beginning of what made you want to go to New York in the first place.
Well, I grew up in a really chaotic household. I didn't understand the depth of it until much later. But there were 5 kids and 2 pseudo adults at the helm. And, my parents, my dad's still with us. He's an astrophysicist, like genius academic and really fun guy. Like used to ride around campus on his bike and coach the tennis team. But he was a drunk, like a total narcissistic drunk. And my mom was on diet pills. And back then that was speed. So she was a speed freak and her personality would flip. I'm not going to self-diagnose that, but you can probably guess. And the first time I really got it, I was 4. We were upstairs in this really tiny bathroom with one of those triangle ceilings. Everybody's like crowded in there and the water's all gray. And it was finally my turn. And I'm super excited to get in. And she just switched. And her eyes went into slits. And she grabbed me hard. She's like, Susie, why are you such a problem? You're such a bad girl. And it was that moment. She beat me. She beat me until the room swirled and went brown. And when I got my bearings, I knew I wasn't safe. And that was the turning point in that house. And so from that point on, I knew I had to be careful. I knew I wasn't safe. And I started making a plan. I mean, I used to, 6 years old, I'd be out in the yard, like wishing myself up on the clouds, talking to the angels. Can you take me out of here, please?
Give me something.
Yeah, I always had that angelic energy, sort of hovering. But I think I was 10 on my beanbag chair in the basement on my belly watching Barbara Walters, who just passed on. And I wanted to be like her. I wanted to go to New York and I wanted to be like Barbara Walters. And ultimately I did make it there, but that's another story. I actually trained Barbara Walters and she actually helped me.
How did that happen? How did you end up actually being Barbara Walters' trainer? Because that's something we didn't talk about when we first chatted.
So I was working at ICM, which is a large global talent agency, and I was a desk assistant, and you don't make a lot of loot. And so I was training people on the side, and I worked for a woman that did this, and she got the call that Barbara wanted a trainer, and she was scared. She's too scared to show up. And she called me. She's like, "Can you be there tomorrow at 7?" I'm like, "Oh, sure, yeah." No problem. Like, I couldn't believe it. There I was, like, after admiring her and wanting to be like her, I was like knocking on her door.
How much do you believe in the law of attraction?
Well, I completely believe in the law of attraction, but I think that we've kind of manipulated the premise into another thing we're doing incorrectly and wrong. But I do believe energetically that we're on a trajectory and things come into our pathway for a reason. And that was one of them. I mean, I've had so many serendipitous experiences like that.
Yeah. So back to your story. So you're young, dreaming about obviously going to New York. So how do you actually then make that happen?
So I was doing my due diligence and went to college, even though I didn't want to go to college. I thought that was going to be a waste of time. And internships at my school then, it wasn't cool. You were supposed to stay in your track and behave. And an alumni came through my sophomore year. She was doing arts management, which I'd never heard about, in New York City. And I wrote her in the summer and said, "I want to come the following summer and intern for you." And she's like, "You got to come this winter. We have our first Broadway season and we need your help." So I negotiated my way out of the dance department And it was tough. Like the head of department was not behind us. I had to go to the dean of the School of Fine Arts, like to convince him, who was actually Maya Lin's dad. Maya Lin did the Vietnam War Memorial in DC, which is incredible. And I got to New York City. I was 19 and like by myself, I landed on my sister's couch in Parsippany, New Jersey, and then made my way into the city 3 weeks later and lived there for a couple of months. And after all that experience, I didn't want to go back to school, but I went back, and then I got myself back to New York. That same arts management firm offered me a position, but I wanted something glitzy, like I wanted like mainstream. Because they were doing performance artists and modern dancers. I mean, it was super cool. But, I wanted to be with like, Woody Allen and George Clooney. So, So I got a job at a large talent agency. I didn't know anybody. People said, you're not going to be able to do it. And I just kept asking questions, asking, who do you know that knows? Until I finally got an interview and got myself in there.
Yeah, that's you bringing up the fact basically you just kept like asking questions and basically just being curious. What I found is that that's actually just the key to like just fucking everything at this point. And what I wasn't really taught in business school was how to be genuine in doing that. Like, I mean, like when we would go to things and it would be for like networking purposes, I didn't realize this, but like it always felt like networking was to get to know people just for the sake that you can do something for me. Like it wasn't out of that genuine curiosity. And like it like built that mindset that again didn't really get me anywhere that I wanted to be. And you don't know that that's what's happening as you're doing it. But over the last, call it year or so, and really honestly, since I've kind of started the podcast, now when I'm reaching out to people, like it's out of that genuine curiosity, not for something. It's just literally to get to know people. And now opportunities are starting to show up, just naturally, things that like I actually want to do because it's building those genuine connections. And that's, I mean, it's so important actually building those genuine connections just because you genuinely want something and don't learn, basically just out of that curiosity rather than you wanting something from them. You just want to learn for the sake of learning.
Oh my God, Cam. Like, I can't believe you survived business school and you're where you are. Like, I totally knew I didn't fit. That's the same thing with the corporate system for me. Like, I had 2 years at ICM and I couldn't figure it out. It just didn't make any sense. And then later on, I had another, I guess it was probably 10 months at Fox. I was just like, what are people doing here? Like, why don't you just talk to whomever you need to talk to? Why do you have to go to HR and like make some, what? Like, and why are you staying here till 6:30 when you were done at 10 to 4? I totally did like not fit that mold, just like you're talking about with business school and then opening up. And I think that's what's a little fluffed up about my interpretation, my old interpretation of law of attraction. It was all taking that same like bulldozer energy and I'm going to figure this out and get through it.
Hustle, do. That's not it.
No, you're right. You're right.
So you went on to have your own, and basically like work for yourself, right?
Well, yeah, it was wild what happened. I was at ICM. My boss left, asked me to join him, which I thought was a great opportunity because when you're on a desk, you don't learn anything. It's like everything's behind closed doors. So he and I worked out of a studio apartment, which was awesome. And I learned how to negotiate talent deals for celebrities. He branded celebrities with, he took celebrities for commercials and stuff. So, and it was great, but he had a little sexual addiction. And he would invite young, beautiful actresses in for their moment on the couch, and I would have to leave. And then one day he tried it on me. And the next morning I showed up at Barbara Walters for a training session, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" She knew immediately. Like, that woman was so intuitive. And I ended up telling her what was going on. I didn't want to because it wasn't like me. I was very tight-lipped then. And She goes, I'm coming down to work with you this morning and we're going to confront this man. And I was like, thank you so much, but I'm going to take care of that. So I did. I left that day. And a couple hours later, I realized there was some stuff I forgot. And I went back and he had already changed the locks on the doors. And Barbara had invited me to an assistantship for her then fiance, who was Merv Adelson. He was heading up Lorimar. But I couldn't take another assistant job. So I decided I was going to open my own talent brokerage firm. And it was cray. I had like maybe a month money in the bank, and I'm like in New York City, like, and I'm like, I got to figure it out.
Damn, talk about just fucking like sweating. Like that actual pressure of being like, I have no choice but to figure this out or else.
Well, and there was another piece of pressure because I had a little issue with addiction to men, and I was in a very abusive relationship, and he controlled the strings through finances. And I had just extricated myself, and then this popped up. So I was like, okay, I cannot even be tempted to go back into that abusive relationship. I have to figure this out. And somehow I got to Donnie Deutsch, who was running his dad's agency at the time. Now he's a host and does a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. He wanted Andy Warhol to endorse Tri-State Pontiac. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a whack. And I couldn't get anybody on the phone. So I go taking the subway down there and knock on the factory door. And Fred answers, Andy's manager. So I tell him why I'm there. And he goes, okay, come back tomorrow at the same time and you can talk to Andy. I'm like, okay. Next day, knock on the door, And I'm sitting in the foyer waiting, sweating bullets. And Fred finally opens these double doors and he's like, Andy, we'll see you now. Great. So I walk in, I start spouting off why I'm there. And these three pugs are running around the studio floor and Andy's in the center with the spotlight coming down on his white hair, poking out everywhere. And he's penciling madly. He won't even look at me. I'm thinking I'm at a dead end. And then finally, he stops. He looks up. He looks me in the eye and he goes, now, really, why should I do this? And I paused and I said, because you can have the pugs in the shot with you. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And that was really like the first deal, and it branded me, and like it just took off from there. I just got celebrities to do a bunch of stuff that they should have never done. Yeah.
It's funny listening to you say that, and actually, believe it or not, reminds me of something. One of the not many things that I did learn while I was in college, but it was only from. Here's the thing: the things that I remember actually learning from college only came from one of the clubs that I was in, which was called the Business Builders Club, which was just like an entrepreneurial club. And then one of my professors, who was my entrepreneurship professor because I was an entrepreneurship minor, and he's the one professor that I still stay in touch with to this day. I actually spoke with him yesterday, and they don't even let him fucking teach anymore because he was pointing out everything that was wrong with the business school. So they told him that he can't teach. But either way, somebody that came in from the Business Builders Club one time and was giving a speech, he was talking about how he was starting his company, and I don't really remember the whole premise of the story, but what stuck with me was basically that if you want to be able to accomplish anything, one thing that helps you is if you're young, dumb, and broke. Because you're willing to do anything. Like you don't have a choice at that point to basically to basically overthink the situation and think of all the, oh, well, what if I fail? What if I do this? Like, you don't fucking have anything.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I was really, really fortunate. Yeah. And I worked my butt off. Like I would have to make 50 cold calls a day and I would like tick them off, like that was the magical thinking at the time. God. But it actually worked. I made 6 figures by the end of my first 18 months. So I was doing something right.
Holy shit. So when did you then move to LA? What sparked that move?
So Roger Ailes asked me to join him to help launch Fox News Channel. And though I didn't agree with his politics, he was an incredible leader. And it was feeling uncomfortable there, and a friend who was out in LA already gave me a call and said, you know, I'm starting this syndicated talk show and I need you to bring talent to the table. Get out here. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. I needed a fresh start. You know, I had a cabin in the woods up in the Catskills, and I was spending more time there than in the city. I just loved the quietude of it and the beauty. And I was sort of becoming a caricature of myself. I'd already been in the city 10 years. So, and every other word was F you out of my mouth.
I'm a real New Yorker.
Yeah. One of my bosses at CNBC was in the promotions department, and he called me in one day and goes, sit down. And he writes something on a pad, he shoves it over. Decaf. Get off the caffeine. Anyway, really what I went to LA for was to meet like one of the most potent gurus of my life, who's my ex-husband.
I like how you refer to him as your most potent guru.
At least so far. Let me knock wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing to take some of the stuff, because I mean, we didn't go into addiction and clinical depression and narcissistic relationships, but you can just guess. And it's really great to come to a point where I see all those experiences as incredible gifts for growth and for transformation. I mean, the name of my book, the title of it wasn't my title. It's my publisher's title. It's called Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And I thought, man, I'm not throwing my family under the bus. Like, you already wrote the book.
Like,
I was calling it like magical illumination.
being like super positive about it and being like, well, they're probably just not going to read it.
Like, just put the Jerry Springer title on it. No, but really, like, I firmly believe like there was a plan before I came down and landed smack in that family. That was no coincidence. And all that I experienced there, whether it's considered positive or considered negative and traumatic, served me to a T. And it all built up to this place of me actually divorcing my ex-husband. I mean, it all came into play. He wouldn't leave the home that I had bought and purchased for our family. I ended up on a mattress on the floor in a partial conversion in the garage. And he was in the master bedroom. So that tells you everything about the dynamics of the relationship that you need. And I went through a year of that, and it's excruciatingly painful, but in order to divorce a narcissist, what I found was necessary for me was to hold no contact. And it was modified contact because we have a son together. So any contact was in writing, and it had to be like, I used the same 5 phrases because I couldn't engage. He knew exactly how to push my buttons, and it was really tough because the circumstances felt a little unjust and unequitable. But nonetheless, that was what was presented. So I needed my experience on silent meditation retreats, because to hold no contact, living with someone that like I totally loved, it was a shock when, you know, I saw the mask fall for real. I was just like, this can't be happening, really? But to hold no contact. And then I also did endurance sport. I think that was my heroin, Cam, to sort of placate the pain. I was a marathoner, and then there were too many injuries just running. So I thought, okay, I'll spread it out over 3 sports. Yeah, but really smart. And then I came to a single sport. But anyway, I needed that endurance training. I needed the experience of holding silence on meditation retreats and no eye contact to get through that experience and that year. And even the uncle that he turned against me, his daughter went through a divorce, and he said, you know, whatever Susan did, you do, because that works.
What made you start the silent meditation retreats to begin with,
So
and when?
I was in New York. I'm sorry to jump on your bite.
No. There's no fucking bites.
I was in New York. I was sober and my life wasn't working. Like I was 4.5 years clean and went to a treatment center. So, because I wanted to kill myself. So friends got me into a codependency treatment center. And I went into a therapy, like the regular talk therapy stuff. And I'm grateful for that stuff because it helped me lay the storyline more clearly. But ultimately, that wasn't the solution.
It wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, it like decades of that brought me right back around to school and where I was. So I had to go, somatically into my body to really release the trauma. But you're talking about meditation. So that therapist was really into it. And she did a half-day retreat in her studio apartment in New York City. And I thought I was going to die. I was like,
A half day?
nuts. Yeah. Half day on the cushion, and I was like, this is worth crap. Like the mind, the chatter was so dang loud. And I thought meditation, like you sat down and everything was quiet. And no, it's like noting, because it was Vipassana. So you just note all the thoughts.
And just let them be there and don't judge them and just try not to let them take a hold of you.
Exactly. And then, yeah.
Until you try to do that, I don't think you realize how much those thoughts are there. Like you don't realize like the never ending and how negative they can be too. Like just how not helpful they are. Have you ever read The Untethered Soul? I forget who that's by, but it's an amazing book that I highly, highly, highly recommend. But it talks about basically like that voice. And if you were to think of that voice in your head, rather than like a voice in your head, but think of it as actually like an external person, and like think of it as like your best buddy that was literally next to you. And if you had somebody that was next to you that was constantly fucking talking to you that way, you'd punch him in the face. you would never allow that to happen. Yet we like allow that to happen in our minds every single day. And we don't even notice it because we think it's so normal.
Yeah. It's big eye-opening awareness when you get in touch with that voice and really see it for what it is. So yeah, that was my launching pad. And then I moved to LA, shortly thereafter and got turned on to another Vipassana teacher. His name's Shinzen Young. Amazing, like completely scientific. Every time we'd go on retreat, it'd be some other kind of, modality that we were working, some other scientific awareness thing. But I loved it, and that's who I did my longer sits with. But ultimately, I asked him a question one day. Like, yes, I'm feeling, the senses, but what about this space out here? Like, I really feel this space out here. And I can like feel color. And he looked at me and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, dude, like, and that was it. That was it on the formal Vipassana training on that level. Cause yeah, there's energy here. We're energy, period. Everything is energy. And so, yeah.
So is that the start of your spiritual path?
I think I was always digging around for a spiritual path even earlier, even in my upbringing. I mean, I was raised staunch Catholic, but I was really into angelic energy and I was quite telepathic. Until I got the message hard that not everybody does that and it's probably not a safe thing. So I ended up putting a cap on that. But I do want to say that was part of my spiritual journey. And then it opened back up once I got clean because, being an addict, I have to have that level playing field, at least initially. I wish I didn't, but I do. I get too confused otherwise.
Hey, anytime that you're putting stuff in your body that's, altering your brain chemicals, like something's bound to happen. Like, again, whether it's going to affect you in the long term or not, you don't really know, but you know, you have to understand. And like, that's why just being able to listen to your body is just so fucking important.
Oh, it's a trip. Yeah, it's a total trip. It's a trip enough. Like, I didn't understand, like, once I dropped all that stuff, like, what a trip it would really become. But, yeah, I think I was just always seeking. And I think it got more comfortable once I really understood that there was a path that I was on, and that was into adulthood. But then that got all rattled up too, you know, going through that whole narcissistic awakening. So I think it, like, I hate to tell you this, Cam, I think it keeps coming and coming in layers. You know, you think you got this corner down, and then it's that back corner you got to slide to.
Oh yeah. No, you gotta stay open to it all. It's, you know, once I get comfortable, that's when I sort of start to notice, I'm like, something's about to come. Like I can feel something coming, and it's like not trying to hold on to like that sense of comfort. Like that's where I would get in trouble in the past, is that I'd have that comfort, I'd sense something coming, and then I'd be like, no, I don't want it to come. Like, you know, let me fucking stay here. Like, this is nice. Let me just enjoy this, and not understanding that, you know, it's not up to me. And it's just enjoying the moments for what they are, but not trying to hold on to them, both the high moments and the low moments. But I mean, especially the high ones, because those are the ones we want to hold on to. Whereas, you know, the low ones are the ones that we're trying to get through. But understanding that, you know, life is always the constant flux of up and down, and just understanding that it's always going to come and it's always going to go. So as long as you have that understanding, allow yourself to feel it all, that's what's going to allow it to actually flow much more freely, if you're not trying to resist any of it.
Which is so true. And that's also the opportunity, I believe, for my soul to really evolve. Like, I'm here in the cesspool of the universe. I might as well get something out of it.
Yeah. That's where like the deep healing occurs too, is in that non-resistant state, I would say.
Yeah. Which is exquisite. I mean, I really feel it around where I am now. In LA, it was a little harder to ferret out. It's still there. There is so much beauty. But here, it's present. Like, I'm surrounded in mountains, and you feel it. The sky is so big, and literally, like, I can hear it. I can feel it. And it's tangible, and it's transformative. It's working on me, whether I like it or not.
What was the hardest part about moving from LA out into what most people would call the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, I'm definitely in rural Northwest Montana. I can walk to Canada. I think the hardest part was the fear of, what if I made a mistake? Because, you know, my son's in college. He's a sophomore, and he's in the state of California. I was going to stay there. And I just thought, yeah, like, I must be crazy. I had a nice setup. Like, California is really expensive, but I had a great setup. And just not knowing and being unsure. And then, you know, I had that beat up thing happening. Like, your house in California was supposed to be a retirement plan. And blah, blah, blah. And I find that if I can just be willing to just take a risk, hey, it might not work out. And I've been a risk taker my whole life. Like, my poor sister doesn't know how I hung together without some kind of corporate job. But yeah, like, I could hear it inside. I could feel it. I could feel my central nervous system was just rattling. I think it was like after the lockdowns. Also, they put a 5G tower on my neighbor's corner. they were talking about my solar panels on my roof becoming cost prohibitive because they were going to roll back all the stuff they grandfathered in that they talked me into in 2015. And then they were telling me, yeah, your capital gains tax may be doubled when you sell your house. And I was like, okay, yeah, those are the physical signs I needed. I had intuitive signs that weren't physical, but that's the universe doing for me, again, what I cannot do for myself. Time to leave LA. And believe me, I didn't want to come to Montana. I wanted to go to West Virginia because I could have just bought a house out right there. I mean, and it's beautiful. It feels so untouched. Montana's getting a little pricey. And I think all those series on TV aren't helping. But anyway, we had friends here, and I wanted to come in the middle of winter because I didn't want any illusion. I mean, I'd lived in sun for a long time. I grew up in snow, and we flew in over the Flathead, and it was like, I don't know, it was like Brigadoon or Camelot. There's some kind of magic, and it just like spoke to me, probably like you in Peru. And the main town is called Kalispell. That felt like I was back in the San Fernando Valley. I was like, I ain't selling my house in Southern California.
Absolutely the fuck not.
No. So, friends said, you might want to check out Eureka. And man, we got on the road up to Eureka, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is like the Catskills times 10. Unbelievable. And I live on a prairie. I didn't think I was going to live on a prairie either. I'm like, Montana, you got to live in the forest. I'm not living on a prairie, turning left by a storage locker in an RV park. And, oh my God. It's just, yeah. It's, again, the universe plopping me right where it wanted me. And I'm so lucky, and I'm so full of bliss. And I really am envisioning bringing other people here to experience this. It's like Sedona before Sedona got overrun.
I wanted to ask, so, you mentioned at the beginning, like when you were kind of growing up, obviously you were addicted to men, and the relationship with your greatest guru happened. Since the divorce, what has been your experience with being in any relationships, if you have been?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that question, because there's a happy ending here. I'm a sucker for a happy ending. So for 7 years, just total devotion, like taking care of my son, single mom thing, making it happen. And I didn't want to go on a date. I was not interested. I didn't trust myself.
Did you not have sex for 7 years?
Not with another human being.
Okay, well, yeah. Of course. The vow, not the complete vow of celibacy that the church wants you to make.
Yeah. No, I went on one date. It was like, on paper, he looks amazing. Friends of mine set the date up, which is the only reason I went. He's like an Academy Award-winning director and an Emmy-winning producer, and he had this hot basketball series out on Showtime at the time. And he talked all week about, we were going to this party and what's going to happen. And, okay, so the day of the date, can you drive over to my house and we'll just go from here? And in LA, if you live in the Valley and somebody lives over on the West Side, I can do that. But dude, the guy lived 15 minutes from my house. Red flag, red flag. So that was over before it started. But I took a course online, and it was during COVID, and it was an angel class, and I met people from all over the world, and did little 15-minute Zooms to get to know them, because I was really hungry to meet like-minded people. Like I had a lot of really good friends and long-lasting friendships, but some of those people didn't know anything about me.
Yeah, like that true sense of community is what actually creates like eternal happy, like, the really like long-standing happiness is like the feeling of belonging. Like that's a natural human trait. And you can have great friends, you can have great relationships, but you don't truly have that community, which is where the like-minded people come into play. There's still always just kind of something missing.
Yeah, you're right. And you're probably meeting a lot of those doing these podcasts for sure. But Anyway, so I did, there are two people in LA and I did like in-person hellos. And at the time, this is so telling, it wasn't even that long ago. You know, I'd have my phone and I'd set it for like 10 minutes before I wanted to get up and leave. So I'm at coffee and it's a guy. He's younger than I am. Like I wouldn't look at him twice. He lost his wife from a 5-year battle of colon cancer. She was diagnosed at stage 3.5 and he kept her alive. He's awesome, like amazing individual. But we just connected and all of a sudden I looked up and like an hour and a half went by. I was like, oh, I gotta go. Like, I'm a single mom. I gotta go, you know. And then we became friends and it was nothing more than friends. And then it shifted and I was like, oh, fluff. I don't want this. And he's dragging his heels too, you know, like totally dragging heels. And the universe is just like, yes, you must, you know. There's no way out of it. So yeah, it's happened. Like I thought the narcissist was the real thing and Prince Charming, but man, this guy's like broke the mold. And dude, it on paper, you like laugh your egg off. It is not a match. He is the most soulful and really is showing me about kindness and like living from the heart, and he's incredible. His hands are so warm. Like he's such a healer, amazing, gifted healer. He's a channel and a medium, and just wow. So yeah, so we're in Montana. We came together, and it's really teaching me. It's exposing the fact that I really don't trust love. And I really don't allow that to come in because I know another shoe's going to drop. You're going to want something. You're going to take something. And he keeps proving over and over, this poor guy. He stepped into it this time. But we're really growing as individuals, and the coupleship is really blossoming, and I'm so grateful. And it's so wild. He's like Hungarian. He spent the first 9 years in Hungary, and my mom's side of the family is all Hungarian, and we're proud of it. You know, we're really proud of that. And then he grew up in Bavaria, so he speaks Hungarian, Bavarian, German, and English. But there's just like such a cool connection that it feels like, okay, it's angelic. It's like broader than this plane, this timeline.
That's amazing.
Take the girl out of Southern California, but you can't take the Southern California hooey out of the girl.
That's amazing. I think relationships can be traumatizing, and they can be even more healing if you're in the right relationship.
Yeah, but hopefully I'm finally in one that's not like quite as traumatizing.
Yeah. You know, just based on everything that you've said, even if it were to theoretically end, it sounds like there's a lot of things that has helped you heal from already.
Oh yeah, we'll be friends forever if it doesn't work out, and we've been together for lifetimes. So, Buster, what about you in that department?
What about me in that department? Man, I've never been in a serious relationship in my life. Growing up, just the way that I saw love play out, did not believe in love like whatsoever. I'm like, this shit doesn't exist. And even I think I consciously or subconsciously made a decision at that point. Like, I just didn't need love in my life. I was going to figure out how to be successful, how to do something without caring, without needing that. Obviously at the core, like, I didn't love myself. That was really what it was. So, you know, how could I let somebody else love me if I don't truly love myself? But my whole thing, basically, once I got to college, I wanted to sleep with as many girls as possible. That was what gave me like the self validation. And it wasn't until I met this one girl who just kind of opened my heart up in a way that it had just never happened that way before. Like, it was a genuine connection. It made me open to the idea of wanting to be in a relationship. And like, here's like, once you have been so closed off to love and you feel like genuine love for the first time, like that shit's addicting. Shit was a high. Oh my God. Like I like, you know, I never wanted it to end. That creates another problem, obviously. So, we never got together or anything like that. We had a, I don't know, interesting relationship for the first couple of years. The thing is that this girl is actually one of my best friends now. And we've been friends throughout that whole time. And it was, you know, rocky at the beginning, but my absolute best friend. But that opened me up to the idea of realizing like, okay, I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life. I don't want to just keep necessarily, you know, just fucking girls and that's it, with, you know, without thinking about it, without any sort of like relationship or emotion. However, again, subconsciously, the shit's deep within. So I keep still kind of doing the same thing, even though I know consciously that this is not what I want to do, but it's patterns that repeat themselves, and that's it. So it's patterns that have just been repeating themselves. And it wasn't until really when I went to Peru in September, and about like a month before that, there was a girl that I was talking to. And like, again, I was attracted to immediately. It was like lust. It was exciting. And then she was like, hey, we need to pump the brakes on this. I was like, understandable. Like I didn't try to fight for it. I knew that, you know, it's something I just had to deal with. But like internally, I was still like, you know, fuck, why didn't this work? What's going on? Went to Peru, had my experience with ayahuasca. That was what made me truly experience self-love, like unconditional self-love for the first time in my life. And that's like a new feeling to me. I couldn't tell you when I've ever felt that way before. So once I came back and felt that way, I now know that my body's inclination is going to be to go back to the same, what's familiar, which is not that. So I wanted to make sure that I gave myself time and space to not allow that to happen. So I came back and I was like, well, for the rest of the year, at least, I'm going to just not talk to any girls, like not even try to get in any relationships. I was pretty much just like closed off to stuff. I'm like, I need to work on myself. And when I say that, like, I truly need to work on myself. And now, yeah, now I'm just open to shit. Like now I'm not trying to chase a relationship. I think it's like a divine presence that I believe will attract the right girl to me. I don't need to go out and find somebody. It's just going to happen. And as long as I continue to live from my heart and be open to opportunity, like that's how it's going to fall into place. So it's just like it's just a belief in the universe, if you will.
Wow, that's exquisite. And I'm so glad you had that experience to open you on your ayahuasca trip. That's awesome. And to feel that, it's great.
So yeah, I'm simply just excited for whatever the next opportunity that I have, in order to know that like it's going to be like a healing process. There's still going to be the old patterns that are now going to come up from the past, and now it's just I'm so much more aware of it than I was before. And that's why I know that, again, just everything that's going to happen is exactly what's supposed to happen. And it's just my job to not fight it. Easier said than done. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I don't know. It looks like it's rolling out pretty beautifully, Cam.
Yeah, we'll see. Once I get to Colorado, I think it'll be everything's just going to come together. I think also too with the fact that I knew that I was going to be moving to a different city in the midst of all this, was like, okay, I can, really give myself time to not do anything and not feel bad about it. Again, when you like kind of judge yourself based on the fact that like, oh, like I need to be constantly validated by other people. Like that's what love sort of was to me, was validation. It wasn't like true love.
I mean, that you recognize that is just blissful. It's bliss. So incredible.
It is. It is bliss.
You got a book in there, Cam. Get a book.
Oh, it'll happen at some point. I don't know. I don't know exactly what I want the theme of it to be yet. Like it's it's something that I've said, yes, I want to write a book, but not something that I'm like, I want to write a book and I'm going to force myself to write a book. Like the words are going to come. I need to continue to just gain the, the universal knowledge that I think I'm gaining.
Yeah, that's, I'm kind of giggling inside because I mean, I was told often, I was told more than several times I had a book to write, by seers and mystics and all sorts of people. And I was just like, fluff. I don't want to go through that. That's like,
yeah. So what made you sit down and finally like write the book? And also when did that happen?
So in that online angel class, there it was again, smack up in my face. So, and I did what you're describing not to do. The producer chick in me came out hard, and I was like, you're going to sit at that desk for 15 minutes every day, and I don't care if nothing comes out. You're going to do it. And so I did that and had a manuscript by the end of it, but it felt cold. It felt a little detached. And so a mentor said, why don't you go sit down and go through it from that little Susie that's inside. And it's taken me a long time. Like I heard that little Susie crap when I was, like decades ago. I think Drama of the Gifted Child, Alice Miller's book, was like super popular then. And it's just like, ick, no. But I've come a long way and really see the beauty in that small, quiet, still, bloody being inside. And I sat down again and I wrote my book from her point of view, the little one that's been through it all. And it totally was a metamorphosis. I'm going to tear up. It was a transformation, another transformation into heart speak. And I became much more connected and saw the beauty of the tale and the journey. It was, so that was like probably, the whole process took probably about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And I just finished it when I was in a cabin at first in Montana. Just, yeah, it sounds very picturesque, but I'm here to tell you, you don't need a cabin. In Montana.
I know I might not need one, but it sounds kind of nice.
Yeah, right on the Stillwater River. And then a producing partner of mine, I actually gave her the really rough manuscript to read it. And she grooms experts for media, and she has a publishing label. She's a New York Times bestselling publisher. And she said, she read it and she's like, yeah, I want to publish this book. And
just like immediately? I know people that write books and they're like, they send it to like 100 publishers and just get denied. And there's like that whole story of like, never give up, never give up.
I think for her, and these are her words, for her, the book is an activation. You could probably sleep with that book under your pillow. I don't know if you'd want to, because it's kind of, some of it's kind of might bring nightmares instead of happy dreams. But yeah, for her, it's an activation, and she really felt she was a different being when she started the book versus when she finished the book. And she feels that there's important information that, I don't know if it came from me or not, but, but yeah, so she's on a mission. Yeah, she's on a mission. So it's going to come out, believe it or not. She called with the publishing date a couple weeks ago, and I almost don't believe it, Cam. It's March 22nd of 2023, and that's my mother's birthday.
Oh, shit.
Who's not on the planet anymore. So another little cosmic message of validation, I think. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing, Susan. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story and being so open, honest, vulnerable, and just speaking from the heart. Like, you talk about energy, and it's like it's felt. It's felt when somebody's actually speaking from the heart out of just genuine curiosity. So thank you.
Thank you, Cam. Thanks for what you're doing. I really appreciate it. One podcast at a time.
That's it. Also, too, I know. I guess this is the end, but I know that you did want to ask me about the title
and trip sitting, and I wanted to get into the whole conversation about tripping and trip sitting, and I don't know. Maybe
we can save that for another podcast.
I would like that. Yeah, I would love that.
I want to. I mean, there's you know, the idea is that, you know, I have a lot of these conversations with people, and hopefully the relationships continue to develop over time. So I think it would be fun once your book is published, and I'm sure that's going to be a whole journey of something just new in your life. So we'll have so much more to talk about. But I guess quickly to answer your question, I guess what is the specific question?
Well, first of all, it's trip sitting. I just was like, wow, that's awesome. You know, of course, me with the producer chick out, the branding's amazing. But I wanted to understand how that came about and what it means to you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me that. I don't think anyone's ever actually asked me that before. So thank you. It was one of those things where, like, again, the name, I think with like an entrepreneur mind too. And like, I also kind of immediately think of like a cool branding name, like what sounds good and rolls off the tongue. But like, it definitely wasn't the first thing that like came to mind when I was thinking of what I wanted to call my blog. So I knew that I wanted to deal with, you know, speaking about psychedelics. So tripping, that's obviously comes into play there. But then also too, like, I knew that I also wanted it to be more than that. Like right from the beginning, I didn't want to silo myself into just speaking about psychedelics all the time. So like, I didn't want it to be like directly related to that. And like, I wanted it to be just about like exploring like genuine human connection and exploring what it means to be human. That's like the tagline for it. And I think I probably had that before I even had what the actual name of it was. But it's just the idea, which is not original, but like, life's a trip. And once you know, I've certainly had a lot of trips using psychedelics, but that opens you up to the realization that life in itself is a journey, is a ceremony, is a trip. And trip sitting to me is about holding space. So I wanted to invite people on the podcast and literally just be able to hold space in order to talk about the human experience, what it means to be human.
And that's why I wanted to be a part of it. Like, I totally believe that life is a trip. It's a journey. It's a trip. But I also feel it's a privilege.
Yes.
To walk through it myself, but to also honor others, even those that I feel weren't so nice to me. I feel like, yeah, it's an honor, like, to sit with you through your trip. And I was so profoundly moved when, you know, I actually came across the podcast before I came across the blog. But yeah, and I just thought it was such a beautiful way to look and encapsulate the journey that we had together.
Yeah, it is a journey. And like, you realize as you continue to go down it, like, you and I are not different. Like, we come from the same creator, source, God, whatever you want to call it. But all of humanity, all of us, like, we see all these differences, but when you really look at the core, all of us are exactly the same. And being able to like recognize and honor that, I think that's how we help the world heal itself. Like, I want to try to heal the world. The world's already in its own imperfect way, exactly perfect as it is. And we just have to help people realize that and basically get back to that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you again to Susan for coming on the podcast and just having a good time with me. If you're at all interested in getting in contact with Susan or checking out her book, I'm going to link to all of that in the footnotes of this podcast. And then also, too, always got to ask if you could rate this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to this on. If you could like it, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And then also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at tripsitting.blog. That'd be dope. So thank you, and thank you again. And I'll see you guys next week.